vintage patterns again. I pulled out this McCalls. I bought it, if you watched my haul a few weeks back, this was one of the things I got in that haul, and it is McCalls 8258. It actually has a different number on it, R11423, and that's happened a few times where I've bought patterns that have an alternate number. I have not looked it up yet. I don't know why. Sometimes I have one number and not the other, but in the pattern books I think it will come up as 8258. So this is a vintage 70s pattern that they have put back in, so it's a reprise of the pattern, and I was fortunate they had it in the plus sizes. So we are going to be making this today. I'm doing the view C length, but I do want the little sleeve on it. Not going to be adding the lace. Wearing my polka dot t-shirt I made to make another polka dot top. This is a shirting fabric, which I also got in that haul, and it feels wonderful. I've pre-treated it. It's been shrunk. I serge up my edge, throw it through the washer and the dryer just like it's going to get treated after it's a garment, to make sure that it doesn't shrink after I've sewn it up. So I've done that. I have already altered my pattern. I'm cutting out a size 18 top. It fits pretty much exactly how I need it to. And then I have sized out on the sides. I've just graded out very gradually to the fullest size through the hip. I don't need it bigger in the bust and the waist, but I'd always like to have a little extra fullness in the hip. I measured and it would go over my hip. It wouldn't have a lot of extra ease, like 5 or 6 inches of ease, but if you look at this, this looks like it's nice and full. So I would rather have more ease than that, so that I kind of have this effect in the dress on my body. So I went ahead and sized out to the fullest size through the hip down to the hem, and then I just folded up the hem. I've kept the integrity of the pattern. It's all back here, just ironed and pressed back. I always, because I do alter my patterns to fit my shape, I usually cut them out in the tissue first to get the sizing perfect before I go to the fabric, and then I don't make a mistake in the fabric cutting, or I'm less likely to. I also cut the tie. It has a little tie in it, and I cut the tie longer just because I want it to look generous and pretty and full. And if you have a short skimpy tie, like, because my waist may be a little fuller, you know, it may just fit me a little differently, a longer tie can make visually make it look more appropriate. A longer tie, I hope, will give more balance to the effect from waist to hip to shoulder. So that's my hope. I'm a little concerned with this little butterfly sleeve. That's just not going to be attractive on me. I usually do a little more fitted sleeve because I'm full and busty, and the sleeve usually hits kind of right in the bust line, and it can create an overly full effect and make me look a little heavier than I want to look. So I'm a little worried about that butterfly sleeve, and we'll see how it looks. If I absolutely hate it, I don't really want to go sleeveless, though I could, and if I really hate the sleeve, I'm going to pin it on and look. If I hate it, I'm going to get rid of it and go back to the sleeveless effect, I think. Anyway, we're going to get this cut out now. It's pretty straightforward as far as cutting goes. All right, let's get cutting. So when cutting out, pieces 1, 3, and 5 all go on the fold, but 1 and 3, we need 2 of them on the fold. So what I did is I made a pattern piece that's open. That's the whole thing. So I don't have to cut it on the fold anymore. I can just lay it out and cut it that way. It makes more sense than trying to put these 2 little pieces on the fold 2 times. This one we only need 1 of, so I can go ahead and put it on the fold like this. And it does not say to put interfacing in anything. I can't find anywhere. It doesn't tell us to cut it out of the pattern pieces. However, I really feel like the shoulder neckline part, I would like it to be interfaced, so I actually just cut my interfacing out first, and that's what I'm using as a pattern piece for those. And then I think I'm going to come back, do the underarm facing and the shoulder band with 1 layer of interfacing too. I just feel like it's going to make the shape of the garment better. So I am going to go ahead and do an interfacing, even though the pattern doesn't call for it. The underarm facing calls for interfacing. It's the only piece I've seen so far that actually says to do that. Here's this one I need to cut 2 of. This one you need 4 of. So after I cut the original 2, I've moved it down here, And then this little piece number 5, I'm going to move down here. So I am doing a little bit at the end, but I've got everything else completely cut out and ready to go. Here I am way down here. If you're cutting out something that takes a lot of space, like this one does, I roll my fabric. So as I pin at one end, I start rolling. So this is the roll here. And then I go back to that end when I start cutting. So I finished pinning down here, and I'm going to gently roll. And I'm not tight, just so that we can keep it on there. I don't lay out one piece, cut it, lay out one piece and cut it. That is the way to end up with not enough fabric, because you've misplaced something and you didn't know you were going to need a fold line or something like that. So I like to lay out the entire thing first and then cut. It prevents mistakes. So now you can see it all fits on the board or on the table easily, and I can just roll this out as I cut and have plenty of space. It makes it nice and easy. All right, I'm going to cut now, and then we'll see you over at the sewing machine. Can you see kitty cat right back there? Here she comes. Are you coming to help me sew? You gonna help me sew? It's my kitty cat. Here she is. Here she is. Wanna say hi? She's a green-eyed blonde. Okay. Let go, let go. All right. We are ready to sew. I have gone ahead and interfaced everything that I want interfaced. Now it only calls for interfacing the little side piece that goes under the arm right there. So that one's interfaced. And then I went ahead and chose to interface this neckband pieces. So that's pieces 1, 2, and 3. I interface, there's two of all of them. Well, actually there's 4 of number 2, which is the shoulder, because it's a self-faced yoke. They call it a band. It's like a yoke. I interfaced one of those. That's going to be the upper one, and then the underneath one will be like the facing or the lining for it. So all of those have been interfaced. I just chose a very lightweight, fusible interfacing. Now we're going to put all of that together. Now the nice thing is they have notches to help us keep it straight, but the other thing we need to do is be able to tell our front from our back, because they are different. They look a lot alike if you look at pieces 1 and 3. Those are our front and back yokes, but if you lay them on top of each other, can you see the difference? See that blue that's showing up there? That's the shape difference between 1 and 2. So they are shaped differently to fit the body. So I'm going to mark my front band. I'm going to put a safety pin in it so that I can keep track of what the front of my garment is. So here's my front with the interfacing, and I'm putting a little safety pin in it, and now I will always know my front from my back. Once we find however you choose to do it, so you just can keep track of front from back. Now that that's done, I can take my piece number 2 and I can pin piece number 2 to piece number 1. And piece number 2 has little notches to help us know front from back. So we're going to pin, and again, I interface. So I'm doing interfacing to interfacing as far as which piece I'm doing, and front to front. So there's a front and a back. So we're making a square. We're making 2 squares. One for the outside, one for the lining. If you are doing the lace, you'll have a lace overlay for one of those. If you aren't doing lace, then you're going to be like me, you're just going to have a self done. So I'm going to just put all of these little pieces on. So you can see how we're just going to pin those together. And you can see it makes a nice mitered corner when we're done. And we're going to have a little square. This is a cute little square neckline. So I'm going to go ahead and get both of these put together. And then we'll have 2 squares, and then I'll show you how to put the 2 squares to each other. Back in a minute. Here are the 2 neck squares. I have them laying on top of each other. I'm getting ready to line them up, matching up all my corners, and we're going to sew this inner corner, inner square, and clip and flip it around on the directions. We've done this and this. And now we're going to do this. And you can see how they've clipped at the corners. That's what's going to make it turn nicely and give it a good press. And then we will baste those edges together. So that's where we're going to get to with our collar now. So we're going to go through this pretty quickly. I want to show you here at the neckline. Can you see there's just a little tiny bit of fullness, a little difference between the non-interfaced and the interfaced side. Now they're exactly the same and sewn up, but when you interface, it makes it firm and it will have less mobility, and often they won't quite fit together exactly the same when you're doing an interfaced to non-interfaced piece. The way to work with that is when you go to sew it, you're going to put the interfacing side up towards the presser foot, and the non-interface side will go down towards the feed dogs, and it will sew in much easier for you. This is how it's going to look when you put that rectangle square under. Just slide it under your presser foot so you can see your throat plate, and then just sew around. It'll go through easy. It looks awkward when you first start. It's easier to do it this way than it is to go this direction. You can do it like this where you're sewing on the opposite side, but if you're not used to flipping and going from side to side and finding your feed dogs, I think it's easier just to go this way. Either way will work if you have the markings on your feed dogs to show you your 5/8 of an inch. So here is the back neckline. This is the interfaced piece that's going to be on the outside, and this is the non-interfaced piece that's going to be on the inside. If you like to do a tag, right now is the perfect time to sew one on before you go any farther. Sew it to the inside piece of this neckline. You can just put it, if you like it in the center back, put it in the center back. If you want to put it, you could easily put it in one of the shoulders if you want to put it in a shoulder. But do it now before you move on if you do tags. So check for any little buckles or bubbles and make sure that your seams line up nice and pretty like this. And if they do, everything's right, then we're ready to go in and clip our corners here. You can either, the easiest way is to clip right through here where you've stitched. It'll just come apart. You just want to make sure that you've got this stitched nice. You may even have to come in and reinforce this again. But we're going to clip all of those corners really quick and turn and press. Okay, here's the little neck piece. Here's my center front. I did put a tag in it. I did not put it in the center back. I put it in the shoulder because I don't like tags on my back. I think it'll annoy me less there. So anyway, here's our little neck collar piece completed. Make sure that you transfer your little markings onto your pieces because everything matches up by those and it will make a big difference. Once we've done that, we're going to come, so we've completed this and this, and now we're going to take pattern piece 4 and run our basting lines, and pattern piece 6 and run our basting lines. So on to that. Okay, so we have got our collar neckline frame put together, and we have basted, I think it's pattern piece 4, which is the bust line. And then we've also basted the skirt for below that. So we are, if you're following along the directions, we're up to number 4 on the instruction sheet. The next thing is the midriff, or the little waistline area. It says baste midriff, lace, or eyelet. So if you're doing a lace or contrast, you're gonna cut out one piece of your fabric and then one piece of your contrast or your lace. If you're doing like I am, where you're doing it all in the same thing, you're gonna cut out 2, and you're treating one as like a, it's like almost like an interfacing, but not quite. They actually call it facing. So you're gonna have 2 of the same thing, and they don't even have you like flipping them around. You're just putting 2 pieces of fabric together to make the little midriff firmer. You could actually cut it out of interfacing if you wanted to. But what I did is I cut them out of the same fabric, and I just faced it so it's right side either way. It's just a little more attractive than having the wrong side. So that's what it's going to look like on the inside of the skirt. So you'll see attractive fabric on the inside of the neck and on the inside of the little waistline area. This is empire waisted, or not quite empire. It's higher than the natural waistline. If you look at the skirt, the little midriff thing kind of ends up higher. So this will not end at your natural waistline. It'll be above that. So just keep that in mind when you're working on it. So we have this. You can base this together if you want to. And then we're going to take this. Make sure you've transferred your markings. They'll have little notches that'll help you line everything up. So here's my notch right here. And that is going to help me line up the notch on this. So we're going to line up notch to notch. And this is strictly to keep everything gathered appropriately. So we're going to go to the edge and line up, and we're going to do that all the way across, and then we're going to pull our gather lines, and we're going to gather our pattern piece 4 to our pattern piece 5, and then we're going to come back and do the same thing to the neckline. So we're going to add this to the midriff and to the neckline, the pattern piece 4. That's what we're working on next. I want to let you know as we're moving forward, this doesn't have a pocket in it, and if you've ever sewn with me before, you know I usually add a pocket if there isn't one, or I regret it. So I'm just taking some scrap, and in that front seam line, it's almost where a princess line would be. I'm going to slip a pocket in that on the right side because I'm right-handed. So that's coming, just warning you. So I've got my little scraps set aside for that. For pocket addition, I've also marked my center front on here just to help when I'm gathering, to keep everything nice and even so I don't get it wonky. So we're going to pin and gather and stitch. So it looks like that. And now I'm going to go ahead and mark my center front. So now I have them pinned together. It looks like this currently, pinned together. And we're going to grab our gathering lines. Remember, when you have your double little gathering lines, always pull the same, either pull the bobbin side or the top side, but pull it the same every time, or you'll end up locking up your stitches and it won't slide anymore. So I usually like to grab the bobbin side. Some people actually, when they do this, will sew the bobbin thread a different color just for gathering to make it easy to see the difference. Okay, so here's my bobbin threads. And I'm just going to start gathering, and you can see it pulling up. And if you pull them nice and even, your gathers will be even. Work our gathers down like this, and the gathers will move right across where you've pinned. And then we're going to even them out, but you can see how that's pulling right in to fit. And that's what we're going to do. And then when it flips up, you'll have little gathers onto your midriff. So we're going to do that. We're at step 6, so I'm going to do the gathers on both sides of the midriff really quickly, and then I'll come back and we'll attach the collar neckline piece. All right, here's the first line gathered on. Looks like this. And I'm going to go ahead and serge this edge. I'm going to go ahead and just serge it to do my seam finish. We need to do seam finishes as we go, just to make it easy. So if you see, this is what I just did this one. I'm getting ready to do this, but I'm going to serge as I go on these sort of things just to keep my garment nice and tidy. Okay, now it's time for me. I've got this done and I've serged these to decide what I want to seam finish independently and what I want to seam finish together. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm looking at how this is sewn together. I was trying to decide, do I want to I think I'm going to go ahead and sew this on, and then I'm going to serge that edge. And then the next step would be, we're going to sew the back piece onto the back yoke, and then I'm going to serge that edge. And then I think I'm going to serge this entire side seam, which will be front to back all the way around and across this. I think that's what I'm going to do, because I'm looking at how this is sewn. I think that I'll do that and serge this separately. We have gotten to step 8 on the directions, and this is how it's looking, which I'm loving this. So cute. Here's the back, and I did just serge this whole thing. So we're ready to start on the sleeve. The sleeve, it's interesting. They call it a baby hem. It is a type of rolled hem, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to pull the little sleeve out here. Make sure you mark your notches, because that helps us line our sleeve up. For the sleeve, we're on step 9 and 10 here. Step 9 shows where you're going to cut the notch, and it is on the pattern. There's these little circles according to your size, and that's where the notch is going to go. So you want to transfer that circle, and we're going to do a little stay stitching in that area and clip a notch, and that's so that we can fold under to hem everything, and that's very important. You cannot do this hem without making that notch, It's called a baby hem. You 100% could roll hem it on your serger if you want to. The baby hem is you fold it up and do a teeny tiny hem line, and then, or a teeny tiny top stitch along the 1/2 inch. You trim away, and then you fold it again like 1/8 of an inch. So it is really, it's a very, very, very narrow rolled hem. Step 14 is making this tie. I'm gonna go ahead and just sew the tie and get this pattern piece out of the way just for convenience for myself. I also need to do pocket. So before I go any farther, I'm gonna do a pocket real quick. On the right side, now remember this is higher than the waist and you don't want a pocket up this high, you kind of want it down hip level. So I'm going to choose where that is. I'm going to serge around my scrap and I'm going to sew on the front right the pocket. I'll do little close-ups for you on it and then I'll have to come back and do the same thing on the side seam later. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this one attached before I go too far so I don't forget. It makes me so sad when I get this far and then I'm like, oh, I forgot to put the pocket in. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, on to close-ups of sleeve, pocket, etc. We're ready to work on the sleeve and I want to show you there's lots of markings. So you've got these small circles, you've got notches, you've got larger circles, you've got small circles, you've got the word gather, and it repeats on the other side. So when we gather, we're actually gathering from this small circle all the way across to this small circle. These are markings to help you line up with your collar, as is this. So that's just to keep life easy for you. And then this one is our notch marking. This is where we're going to, where you're gonna make the clip. So we're gonna do a little basting line here and a clip down at this circle. So hopefully that helps make this a little more sense because it just says gather between small circles and you have small circle here and small circle here and small circle here and small circle here. And we're not gathering at all of those places. So here's how it looks where you make the clip. Here's the gathers section and here's the other side for the clip. Now we can do the baby hem. Step 1 of baby hem. Here's my clip, my reinforcement, and we're stitching 1/2 inch all the way around and it comes back around to the other clip here. All right, so that's step 1. That is what this is showing. This is the 1/2 inch. We're going to press up right along that 1/2 inch and start folding over and closing that in. So I'm gonna go ahead and press and trim and then I'll show you how that looks. All right, on to the next step in doing the baby hem. I have trimmed away. So here you can kind of see how much I've trimmed right there. And I'm starting to press up right along where I've stitched. And that stitching actually helps just pull this in a little bit to take in the curve. And once I've got that pressed, I'm going to press one more time real narrow like this, and then we're going to stitch it down. And if you're doing the corner is going to be the hardest part, and I would personally tuck the corner in like this, kind of do like you're doing a mitered corner almost, and then it'll make it a little easier when you're doing the rest of it. So here's the corner. You can see I folded in that little corner. And then these meet, so it's sort of like a mitered corner, but we have one more fold to go. Now you can 100% go ahead and top stitch this if it makes it easier for you, and it probably will. And then after you've stitched it, you fold it one more time and stitch it again. That's usually the easiest way. If you're really comfortable with these tiny hems, you can go ahead and press one more time and just press twice and stitch once, or you can press, stitch, press, stitch. So we're going to press it up, stitch it, press it over, and stitch it. If you press and stitch once, this is how it looks. You can see how close to the edge that is. And then I'm going to come back and press one more time and stitch again so that there's no raw edge. All right, last step on the sleeve baby hem. So here's where I just turned, stitched, and trimmed. And now I'm just pressing up one more time. This is about 1/8 of an inch, like this, and then we'll stitch it. Up here in the corner, this time, instead of doing the folding under, I'm going to actually do this. So I'm actually going to take the curve up to the edge and then take this edge over. I'm just finding it's a little too bulky to do this turned corner. Just do whatever works best for you, what makes it easiest for you. As long as you have a nice finished edge and you don't have anything hanging out, we just want it to be nice and smooth. And then we will have the sleeve hemmed and we can finally finish putting our dress together. All right, baby hem is done. It's a little hard right here in this corner. I will say that's sort of the trickiest spot, but that's how it looks. You can see how pretty it is. Now, I've got a fairly, a lightweight cotton that I'm sewing with, but you can kind of see when you do this hem, it gives it some fullness and some body. So it will stand out a little bit. I think it'll look really pretty though. All right, on to the next step. Okay, I'm getting ready to attach the sleeve to the bodice or to the dress. You can see here's where my little hems are. I haven't trimmed up my thread yet. And we're using the notches and the circles to line everything up. It's a little confusing because there's lots of circles and they aren't all marked. Like sometimes the circle will be marked and it'll say shoulder or seam line or something. And a lot of these, there's just a circle. But you can see, here's my notch. And this is one of the circles and it lines up perfectly with the beginning of our gathers. So we know that's where our gathers start. And then there's one here that's sort of a shoulder line. So I've got it kind of pinned in. I'm going to now do my gathers. I'm going to straight stitch it and then I'm going to come back and serge, and I'm going to reserge this little section, just serge them together. Just finished sewing on the sleeve. And I went back right here where there's this one raw edge. Because I'm going to serge here, you can see there's going to have this little space where there will be nothing finishing that off. So I just zigzagged over this first, and then I'm going to come back and serge that, and then I won't have any raw edges on any of my sleeve. So here, sleeves are on. They're pretty cute. And next we're going to work on the side panel, and it has us pinning that tie to the side panel, but it lines up with this waist midriff. So I'm just going to pin it on this part because it's getting caught in this seam either way, and I think this is just simpler. So I'm pinning the ties on here, and the tie is shaped just like the midriff. So you can see the angle like this, just like a waistline would be. So the wider part is up at the top and the narrower part is down at the bottom. Okay, let's work on our side panel. All right, I've taken my little under arm facings and they're interfaced, and I've serged the edge, and they're going to get sewn on here. So we're going to put them right sides together like this, and there are little notches to make sure we get them lined up right, so you can see. There we go. And we're going to just sew that at 5/8 of an inch, press and turn it. Might need a few little clips, so we're going to do that to both underarms. And then I'm going to line up my pocket for the side that I'm putting the pocket in, and we'll be ready to put the side panels on. Okay, this is the easy part. Here's our side panel. And we're just pinning it on back and front. There are notches, etc., to help us line everything up to get it right. And we're just going to sew it in. This is the side panel that I'm not putting the pocket in. I'm only going to do one pocket. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this one up, and then I'll show you the pocket side. I don't know if you can tell the sun's setting. I've been in this room a long time today, but we're almost done. So I've got all the side seams in except for the last one, which is where the pocket goes. Here's the front, and I've just stitched the pocket, leaving seam allowance top and bottom. And actually, you only need to sew as deep as you want the hand to go in, and then the rest can be free, and I've serged all of that. So I'm just lining those up side to side and stitching them in, and then when I come back to sew my side seam, it'll just be like any pocket you've done before. We'll sew up to the pocket and stop, sew around the pocket and stop, and then sew on up. Pocket is in, and because this pocket is lower than the seam that it would normally attach from, so you kind of get the saggy pocket, this is my little fix for that. I take a ribbon or a piece of elastic, and I'm going to sew it up here in the seam, and then I'm going to come down and attach it to the top of the pocket. It's still free floating and moving, but it supports the pocket so it won't sag if you put your phone or something like that in it. So I'm going to do my little pocket trick and put the hem in. I'm all done. The sleeves are something else, I have to say. They're quite voluminous, and I don't know, they look 70s, but they also give me a very 1930s vibe. I did do the size 18, which according to the measurements should be too small for me. for this up here on the bodice, but actually I could have probably even gone a little smaller, just in this part specifically, just so that it fits a little closer, but it's fine. It's a little gappy, but not terrible. I think it's a cute style. Even though it's a very 70s style, it definitely can be very modern too. This was a long process, however. The sleeve takes a long time. It's not anything specifically super difficult, but it is time-consuming little things to get to the final product. So it is like 7 o'clock. I've sewn off and on for the entire day on this, including pattern prep, etc. So definitely for most people, not a one-day sew, would be a weekend sew or maybe a week sew, depending on how much time you have to work on it. But I think it's quite flattering and very cute.